Good evening. In this broadcast, the information program Time. Today, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, delivered an address in the Kremlin to the Federal Assembly. Among the priority directions in his activities, the President Boris Yeltsin named strengthening the rights and liberties of individuals, the restoration of peace and calm in Chechnya, deepening civil accord, the continuation with economic reforms, and launching judicial reform. The Russian public did not take the path of political extremism. The basic part of political forces in the country and their leaders avoided extremist slogans and preferred lawful, peaceful methods in their political struggles. Last year, there was an evident waning in the support for slogans of secession of certain territories from the structure of the Russian Federation. Illusions were dispelled that that could be a solution to problems. Because of common efforts, the opposition between the legislative and executive branches of government of Russia, which was the main threat to the life of the country in the first years of reform, has basically ceased. I feel that today we must say with full conviction that we've harnessed ourselves to a common load. We must pull it all together. We must work as much as is defined by the Constitution. And in set time limits, we must embark on elections of the State Duma and President. That is my position. This is our common debt before the voters. The complete address of the President to the Federal Assembly will be shown immediately after our information program, but those who heard it either in the Kremlin auditorium or in the live broadcast on Channel 1 are already making predictions. Will the course be realized as described by the President in his message? A confirmation of the course of reform, an invitation for cooperation, is probably the main direction of the address of the President to the Federal Assembly. Overall, it seems to me that the address of the President was quite constructive, especially the position in any event to preserve freedom for speech and the categorical inacceptability of stepping on mass media, his position on the need to conduct parliamentary presidential elections on time, the position connected with the need to conduct reform and state guarantee for private property, stabilization of finances, and reorientation of expenditures toward social needs. A significant place in the address of the President was given to social problems, considering the fact that the social price of reforms, as the President noted, is still quite high. Singling out the theme of the role of government in ensuring citizens' rights, the leader of the Communist Party, Gennady Zyuganov, noted, at least we must separate executive and representative branches of rule, place under the control of the executive branch what is responsible for finances, money in the budget. At the same time, the recent decision of the Federal Assembly to increase minimum salary, in the opinion of experts, is of a populist nature and not substantiated by real budget potential. No one has the right to undermine the budget, the President said in his address, or the financial stability will be threatened by interruption. I will now cite the address of the President and base myself on it. He's given me a powerful weapon. When I'm approached by people asking for things and money, even at times with great demands, I'll say, here's the address of the President, and the budget is the law. Problems which were outlined by the President are so extensive that during the course of 1 year, it's unlikely to resolve them all. The address, according to the press secretary of the President, Vyacheslav Kostikov, is of a time-protracted nature and exceeds the mandate of the current Parliament, and even that. The President is concerned for the future of Russia, and I would say, in this address, ideas were reflected of the idea of acceptability of state rule, but the idea of the acceptability of presidential rule. That is, the President seems to expound his own program, which exceeds the parameters of 1996 as well, I would say. Upon conclusion, he added, "We have understood him." The agreement on ceasefire in the zone of the Chechen conflict, which took effect today at 0000 hours local time, is observed overall. Wednesday evening, on the line of contiguity of the sides, 4 times crossfire erupted, the last of which became silent at 23:25. Today, evidently, no one will risk to predict the time of the final resolution of the Chechen drama, which is in its 3rd month. But these last 2 days probably seem unusual for Grozny residents. They must become accustomed to silence, although it's a relative silence. Because of the agreement achieved yesterday during talks between the commander of the group of federal forces with the leadership of Dudayev formations, today, along the line of resistance, only isolated shooting incidents from firearms were noted. Heavy technology is silent. Possibly tomorrow, the 3rd meeting will occur, where they will agree to extend the truce, which, for now, remains quite fragile. It's fragile because none of the sides in the conflict believes in the sincerity of the other. There's no unanimous opinion among our military regarding the talks which have opened. In the opinion of the Colonel General Kulikov, who heads the group of federal forces, the dialogue process in the Chechen Republic is controllable, and among field commanders, in his opinion, a tendency of understanding the need for a bloodless resolution of conflict should prevail. The commander of the air paratrooper forces, the Colonel General Yevgeny Podkozin, feels that with Dudayev representative, talks may be only conditional on the surrender of gunmen and that they lay down their weapons. Apart from that, only firearms, because they have almost no heavy weapons left, and that's why, in his opinion, they've agreed to talks in order to protract time until spring arrives and manage during that time to regroup forces and supplement their arsenals. Meanwhile, the process of ridding Russia of a cancer of the Grozny regime is underway. This description was heard from the mouth of the Russian president, just as another comparison in the latest events in Chechnya, as in a drop of water. All the problems of contemporary Russia were reflected. But this admission by the Russian head of state doesn't alleviate matters for those who still remain in the zone of the Chechen conflict. From here, the position of the Central Aero Mobile Regiment of the Ministry of Emergency Situations near Tolstoy Yurt, daily the ministry personnel and rescuers drive to Grozny, find themselves under fire to save peaceful residents. Since December, the 3rd replacement body of rescuers, in essence, daily evacuates tens of people from the so-called transparent basin situation in which life barely sustains itself. The constantly functioning radio station Central Rescue broadcasts telegrams from Grozny residents attempting to contact relatives and tell of their tragedy. House number 38, apartment 52. Mother has died on the 13th of January. The house burned down the 1st of January. Details in my letter, your father. Now all the telegrams are passing only through our fellows who are working in Grozny and who gather them personally from people in the streets. We're transmitting telegrams only through the ham radio emergency network. That is 1/3 we are transmitting ourselves. The 2/3 we convey to Moscow to the coordinator Andrei Fedorov in Moscow, and he's making contact with the entire ham radio network of Russia in the near, abroad, etc. With the aid of the Ministry of Emergency Situations, refugees end up in Ingushetia, where there are already more than 120,000, increasing the population of the Republic by 1.5 times. The mayor of Nazran, Zakhar Sultygov, in places of refugee concentration, expects epidemic outbursts, therefore is waiting for volunteer doctors to arrive, including those who can aid in the psychological rehabilitation of children who lived through the bombings, for example, these from the Grozny region, Katayama. I was on a bus. They were bombing. And when we were on the road, 2 buses ahead of us blew up. 2 buses, yes, with people. The vice president of Ingushetia, Boris Agapov, feels that the number of refugees soon could increase catastrophically if the combat is not put an end to. We must admit clearly that they're warring with the people, and they should seek a stop and ask forgiveness for what they did before the people and with the people, and admit this grossest error, admit that a most serious mistake was made which led to tragedy. And only then not everything will be lost. Today, the President of Russia signed a decree on measures to liquidate the repercussions of the Ossetino-Ingushetian conflict. In it, it says specifically that the decree of the President has expired on declaring a state of emergency on part of the territory of Northern Ossetia and Ingushetia. The post of the acting authorized representative of the President in Chechnya, Boris Yeltsin, temporarily has assigned to the first deputy chairman of the government of Russia, Oleg Soskovets. Oleg Nikolaevich, what does your appointment to Chechnya mean? It signifies the attention which the President is devoting to restoring the economy and everything which was destroyed during the period of combat and also during the period of the so-called government of Dudayev in Chechnya. Was it unexpected? No. It was not unexpected because during the entire period of this conflict, I had to be involved here in organizing the work of organs of federal rule in Chechnya. And you know that at the last meeting of the staff, we had planned a trip to the site to organize work to restore everything which was destroyed. Where will you be located, in Moscow or Grozny? We will most likely work in Moscow, Chechnya, Northern Ossetia. That is, you have not been separated from your duties as First Deputy. No one has dismissed me. I'm also the First Deputy Chairman of the government, so we'll combine the carrying out of both of these duties. Today, the President of Russia set out a complex of measures to restore the economy of Chechnya. The government is given 1 week to form a special state commission which will coordinate activities in that area and in 1 month will complete a federal program to restore the economy and the social sphere of the Chechen Republic. These instructions of the President were formulated in a corresponding decree. The Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, Oleg Lobov, confirmed the readiness of the federal authorities to conduct peace talks in Chechnya on virtually any level. Oleg Lobov did not exclude the danger of the spread of the conflict to neighboring Dagestan, where, according to his information, a certain part of the gunmen has found cover. The spiritual leaders of the Muslims of Russia, as previously, are for the cessation of combat in Chechnya and hope to personally meet with the President of Russia. This was stated at a press conference by the participants of the Higher Council of Clerics. The Islamic leaders don't intend to remain silent observers of events and are ready for decisive political action. As a measure of effecting the secular rule, the clerics intend to influence the 20 million Muslims of Russia during the impending parliamentary and presidential elections. We will support those leaders who will make a contribution into stopping this bloody massacre. We will appeal to the presidents of our republics so that they should influence and make their contribution into stopping the war. Apart from that, the head muftis of Russia also feel they have the right to appeal to the Muslim military servicemen and urge them to refrain from combat in Chechnya. If this war continues, we will appeal to the youth of conscription age to refuse the spring draft. Yesterday, in the Military Medical Academy in Petersburg, the famous heart surgeon Yuri Savchenko conducted a serious operation to extract a bullet from the heart of a soldier injured in Chechnya. Today, this topic was continued. His life hung on a thread, noted the surgeon, but he doesn't consider the surgery to be unique. In 1982, it was more terrible when he had to save an Afghan war soldier. Then, this was the first bullet removed by Shevchenko from the heart, and Vladimir Kamanov, who recovered, took this no longer threatening piece of metal home to Odessa. Since then, Shevchenko has performed more than 30 such operations. And today, Andrei Rudakovsky has received from the surgeon his bullet, and soon he will take it home to Belgorodchina. Note, said Shevchenko in a conversation, that we doctors are outside of politics, but it's true, he admitted, it's difficult to think that the bullet which you've just removed from a Russian boy's heart was manufactured at one of the Russian plants. Today in the government, base documents were discussed which will permit the next steps to be made in market reform. The package of decrees on the reform of state companies combined draft laws and resolutions of the government on fiscal state factories, plants and manufacturing facilities, that is, those which the government will finance itself. The drafts were developed by the State Committee of Property, and in the opinion of cabinet members, many details weren't outlined, especially social security of collectives after the companies declared state fiscal. Also, with preconditions of more work, the draft was approved by the government and will be submitted to the Duma for ratification. The examination of draft laws on mortgages progressed similarly, that is, with the possibility of mortgaging properties in the form of buildings, apartments, homes, and land to attract private investments. The draft law was adopted, but with the condition of simultaneous examination of a general law on mortgages and also accompanying enforcement acts. A special session of the Federative Council was convened urgently urgently today to discuss for the third time the law on increasing minimum salary and was not held because of an absence of quorum, but the principal decision of the deputies to review the question again remains in force. This decision was made under the pressure of harsh criticism by the government. The economics minister, Yevgeny Yasin, today specifically said that he will consider resigning if this law is adopted on increasing salary up to 54,100 rubles. Despite the fact that there was no plenary session in the Duma today, and since morning the deputies heard the presidential address, in the afternoon the Duma boiled with turbulence. One may say pre-election turbulence. The first to hold a press conference was the head of the LDPR, Vladimir Zhirinovsky, stating that in Russia, in all directions, everything has collapsed, and compared the country with a critically ill person. Vladimir Wolfovich offered his prescription. We should close up our state. If we don't close ourselves up for 4 years, 5, 7, 10, we will perish. Stating that no elections, either parliamentary or presidential, will save the country any longer, Zhirinovsky yet said that his party will participate in all elections. Even if our party wins at the elections and I become the president, we can't move like we are doing now. Speaking later to the press with the chairman of the Committee on Organizing the Work of the Duma, Vladimir Bauer, his conflict with Russia's choice continues to escalate. Bauer officially stated that he's pulling out of the faction, but he will not leave his post as chairman of the commission. The role of a key interfactional committee, a common Duma committee, could not be otherwise than non-partisan. Russia's choice, with delight, accepted Bauer's notice of withdrawal from the party and insisted on a commission to investigate the work of that Duma committee. In the evening, after a tense work day in the Duma, guests were greeted. The faction Democratic Party invited the Grand Duchesses Maria Vladimirovna and Leonida Georgievna. Deputies from the faction Women of Russia on the 50th anniversary of victory met with war veterans. Intending to approach the Russian parliament with a legislative initiative is the Primoria Rim Duma. The reason is to re-examine the Russian-Chinese agreement on demarcation borders. Pursuant to that document, China gets more than 1,500 hectares of Primorian land, with which residents of the Rim categorically disagree. The demarcation of the eastern portion of the Russian-Chinese border generated much dispute. According to the agreement from 1991 between the governments of both countries, a shift in China's benefit of 15 square kilometers of Russian land is outlined in Primoria. Incidentally, an enormous cedar forest is lost, a strategically significant area of the Lake Hassan, the Dumansky Island on Ussuriya River. Against such an arrangement of the border, the Rim residents categorically are in opposition, and the local administration. Visiting the area over the recent dispute was the Deputy Speaker of the Federative Council, Anatoly Dolgolaptyev. The chairman of the Russian-Chinese Demarcation Commission, Henrik Kirin, insists on the expedition of field work to delineate the border further in order to somehow resolve the stalemate situation. The governor of Primoria, Yevgeny Nasrytenko, turned to the prime minister of the country, Viktor Chernomyrdin, with a proposal to create an interdepartmental commission to investigate the circumstances in preparing and adopting this agreement on undisputably giving up to China the historically Russian land in the Far East. The current volume of manufacturing in the defense sector of Russia is only 20% of the levels of 1991. But the source for supplementing combat technology can be not just the latest manufactured goods. Ukraine in the near future can supplement the fleet of Russian bomber planes. Ukraine continuing to work as a group of military experts from the Military Air Force of Russia. They're assessing the condition and quality of the Tu-160 and Tu-95 bombers. According to preliminary agreement, these planes will soon become the property of the Russian Federation. The powerful strategic nuclear bombers, the Tu-160s, were left to Ukraine as inheritance from the Soviet Union, and since 1992 have made no training flights. Because to fuel the planes, 170 tons of fuel fuel is needed. In the energy crisis, this is an impermissible luxury for Ukraine. The distance of flight is more than 12,000 kilometers. Considering the area of that country, one can fly only along the perimeter. To keep or maintain 1 to 160 without flights or fuel costs $400,000 a year, and there are 40 planes of such a class in Ukraine. For a non-nuclear neutral state, this is expensive and unnecessary. The enormous state debt of Ukraine to Russia doesn't permit appraising the destroyers at world prices. Probably, according to the head commander of the Air Force of Ukraine, they will be handed over on a barter basis in exchange for necessary spare parts for the fleet of Ukrainian civilian planes. 3 workers died last night at the Gorky automobile plant in Nizhny Novgorod. This tragedy occurred in the metal casting facility as a result of a gross violation of the safety of technology. During the night preparatory shift, in the absence of any emergency circumstances, and at this time this is the only fact which we've been able to establish, in the furnace which smelts ore, the loader fell in. Later, evidently to save his friend, the furnace operator found himself in the cold oven, and later a crane operator. The last victim was a woman. This was trying to analyze all the such situations at the plant. They didn't yet decide how, without any aids from a 2-meter depth, this woman in an already flaring up volcano could rescue bodies of 2 men. Of the reasons for the tragedy, which occurred within a quarter hour, is being carried out by a government commission. We continue the broadcast. Today, the President of Russia, through his decree, has appointed Valery Sirov Minister on cooperation with the CIS member countries. The 55-year-old Valery Sirov previously had worked as the President of the International Union of Builders. The post of the Minister of the CIS Affairs had been vacant for several months after the transformation of the Committee on Cooperation with the countries of the Commonwealth into a federal ministry. In Armenia, today, the press, which is in opposition to the official authorities, began an action of protest against the closure of several Republican publications. As a result of this action, 300 journalists were left without work. Today, the protest march along the streets of Yerevan was organized by the journalists of the publications banned lately. The decree of the President Petrosyan in the end of last year, and after that the decision of the Supreme Court to temporarily suspend the activities of the party of Dashnab-Sutu on the territory of the Republic, precipitated adequate measures against the several sources of mass media. And incidentally, not only the official organs of the ARDF, Azar Tamat and Irzirkir, employees of 6 more papers and publications and information agencies, overall around 300 people, lost jobs only because of the fact that at the helms of these publications were members of the Dashnab-Sutu party. Not waiting for a prosecutor's decision on the topic, the journalists went to the presidential residence where they handed a joint statement to the representative of the apparatus. The ban on our activity, it says in it specifically, is a direct violation of the law of the Republic on press because there was no judicial decision regarding the closure of at least one of our publications. Mikhail Yakovlevich Gefter has died, a historian, philosopher, and writer. During the years of war, defender of Moscow, honored with the Soldier's Order of Glory. He saw contemporary history in live interaction. All his life, he defended freedom of speech, conscience, and human rights. The Russian Premier Viktor Chernomyrdin on the 17th and 18th of February will officially visit Poland. One of the questions which must be resolved during the trip will be the problem of the mutual debt. Several times postponed, the visit of Viktor Chernomyrdin to Poland will begin tomorrow. This is a business trip and was prepared for a long time and meticulously, sufficient to say that here in the Ministerial Council, signatures by Viktor Chernomyrdin are awaited by 9 documents, and yet the announcement about the arrival of Viktor Chernomyrdin created the impression of, I would say, a small sensation. The matter is that the current government of Voldemar Pavlik is expecting at any time a non-confidence vote from the Sejm. The new cabinet is being formed by Yusuf Alexei, although he hasn't agreed to take the post of Prime Minister. Evidently, both sides have decided that the long-term state interests should not depend on political collisions. Today's Poland officially is of a pro-Western orientation, but its business and economic interests are fixed significantly to the east. This is confirmed also by the gradual restoration of business relations between between our countries, who at one time were separated by politicians. Last year was a breakthrough year. During the 9 months, the trade turnover immediately grew by 2 times, and the tendency is becoming stable. However, there still are doubts, and this was shown by today's briefing, which was held in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Will Ukrainian-Polish relations be affected by the laying through of a Russian gas line through Poland, circumventing Ukraine? And will the country be again placed in dependence on Russia by signing an agreement on military technical cooperation? How will it be responded to in NATO? These questions are probably more emotional, but we must say that our intergovernmental relations are also quite subject to emotions. President Yeltsin today sent to the Commander-in-Chief of the Korean National Army, Kim Jong-il, a congratulatory message on the national celebration of North Korea. As a most significant national holiday, North Korea celebrates the birthday of the son and the heir apparent official of the Kim Il-sung president who died last year. Kim Jong-il is the Kim Il-sung today. This slogan is repeated in North Korea today. On the day of the celebration, 2 non-working days were declared in the Republic. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs today announced the intention to, in all ways, contribute to peacefully resolve the conflict between Peru and Ecuador. According to the official Ministry of Foreign Affairs representative, Moscow intends to demonstrate restraint in military technical cooperation with the 2 countries. The truce agreement between Peru and Ecuador is being observed for now. How long it will last, no one can say, either in the capitals of the countries nor mediators from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, or the United States. The danger of new clashes remains until such time that a legal demarcation line is established on the 78-kilometer stretch of the border in the Amazonian area. Because of this, 3 weeks ago, the conflict flared up between the 2 countries. And it's not just because this area is full of mineral wealth. National pride has been offended on the part of the 2 countries who feel that the disputed border is their own territory. Immediately after announcing the truce, Peru and Ecuador announced their own victories. However, the undisputable result of the conflict was only the losses in human and material form. Today, a Polish trawler 120 miles from the coast of Japan found 2 citizens of Russia, Gennady Ulyanov and Sergei Kalich. They were drifting on an inflatable raft. The Polish fishermen raised the unlucky drifters on board their own ship, but for now it's not known how it was that the Russians found themselves far from their native coasts. The northeastern states of Brazil, which are closer to the equator, for the 2nd month are suffering from severe drought, often accompanied with sandstorms. And 3,000 kilometers from there in the southern Brazilian states, they don't know where to hide from the torrential rains. Thousands of families are already homeless and almost 30 people have died. In the state Mato Grosso do Sul, farmers are making desperate attempts to save their domestic livestock from the waters. Enormous damage has been caused to the agricultural goods. Bridges have been demolished. All roads are in a state of disrepair. Especially feeling the blow is one of the largest cities on the land, São Paulo, because of landslides and hundreds of shanties which have been washed away. The number of victims has exceeded 40. During the last bout of flooding, on the streets, a 118-kilometer-long bottleneck formed which paralyzed the life of the 20 million population of the city. Water has washed 14,000 potholes and enormous craters in the asphalt. In the opinion of scientists, the torrential drains and the droughts are caused by the same natural phenomenon, the recently born warm jet stream, the El Niño. This is a powerful current with a periodic appearance of every 1 to 3 years. Currently is developing along the coast of South America in the equatorial Pacific and causes global climate changes. They feel that El Niño specifically is at fault for the current catastrophic floods in Western Europe and the United States. In dependence on nature's powers, people have well learned that nature is not a temple, but a workshop and man is a worker. The Moscow Zoo is a workshop in the literal sense. Their repair is under work. Yuri Lushkov went there to see their progress. Incidentally, the mayor of Moscow, Yuri Mikhailovich Lushkov, was not the first prominent politician who delighted the Moscow Zoo with his presence. Although Yuri Lushkov, unlike his predecessor, today was not so much worried about the workers and peasants, but the elephants and gibbons and other animals. I was looking at your camera. Please show me what you've already done. Why are you showing me just faces? This was the result of the subsequent talks with builders and designers. Something was done for reconstruction, but very little and not of the best quality. What is the matter? Do you have patience enough to do everything in such low quality? Everything is as before. The builders are ready, rearing to go, and the designers are delaying with documentation. And the objective must be completed by 1997 to Moscow's anniversary. It will be an embarrassment. And after all, animals live in the park, and they will never understand our reasons. By principles of common human values, we can't treat animals this way. And in the end, if we believe Darwin, then some of the residents of the zoo are antecedents of the mayor, the president, and we mortals. We must remember our history. We've often been reminded of this. Our broadcast will be continued by Anatoly Malevin with the sports events. All the best. In Moscow, the key match of the European Club Team Championships. In it, the Army capital teams and the basketball players from the Israeli Maccabi team. The Army's aim is to win and beat the team by with a 4-point advantage. This would be a guarantee for a spot in the finals of the European Championship. Good evening. The first time is for our basketball players, 42-34, and they're ahead of schedule. As events will develop, you will see from a report on Channel 1 Ostankiно at 0 hours 20 minutes. Congratulations to Lyubov Krimlova, who set a world record in Erfurt, Germany, in the 1-kilometer dash. In the meanwhile, Anatoly Karpov and Boris Gelfand have signed a truce in the 7th chess match for the world title. The world champion is ahead 4-3. The winner will play the American Gato Kamsky, who, according to Itarta Sports, was fined for 150,000 Swiss francs for inappropriate behavior after a match. And we go to the World Championships in Antwerp. The 20-kilometer race was won by the Polish biathlonist Tomasz Sikora, the first gold for Poland. The bronze went to Oleg Ryzhentsov from Belarus. In fifth is our Vladimir Trachov. In the women's 15-kilometer race, the fastest was the French woman Connie Negre. Ours are in the failure. They're not even in the top 10. In the International Hockey League, we'll single out the match in Petersburg between the contenders for the 1/8 position. The local Army beat Spartak 3-2. Mini soccer, a spectacle with exciting combinations. In Moscow, another level of the Championship of Russia for auditoriums is underway. Leaders are the Dina team beating the Vis club 5-0. They're 3 points ahead of the Moscow Inkasatsi team. The fact that in the United States golf is a national pastime is undisputable. Almost all the men of America have golf clubs. That's also an established fact. But the match of the American presidents, the current Bill Clinton, the former George Bush, and Gerald Ford, is the first. Unique shots on the racetrack of the alpine skiers in the United States executed by a bicyclist. This trick of mountain speed undisputably deserves to be in the World Book of Records. 3 times there were names of other racers. The Urgen Afganers from Germany. He was the first to jump from the ski trampoline, but on a motorcycle.